Welcome to the Study On podcast. I'm your host, Angie Bauman, and I am passionate about Bible study. Friend, my journey has not been an easy one. I am a trauma and abuse survivor, and I still walk with a limp. But I also walk in freedom because as I've studied God's Word, He has released me from layers of shame and invited me into a life filled with an abundance of His peace, joy, rest, and hope. I'm transformed because I study the Bible, and my heart's desire is to create offerings that help you get and stay in your Bible so you experience that transformation too. So thank you for spending a few minutes with me. Maybe it's as you enjoy your coffee or with pen and notebook ready, or you're driving to work or walking the dog from wherever you are in your day. Let's dive deep into a verse of scripture together. So we walk steady on. Let's get started. Welcome, friend. Today we are continuing on in our series of episodes where we are unpacking the 16 characteristics of love outlined by the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 to 8. I published a Bible study on these verses in December of 2023, and it was the first study we journeyed through in Study On University, and the learning was so rich during that study that I decided to bring pieces of it here to the podcast. And of course, I linked that study in the show notes if you would like to take a closer look. And today, what a treat this is for me. My son, Alex. My son, Alex, is joining us. Welcome back to the podcast, my dear.
Yeah, it's been a few months. Good to be back. I'm looking forward to it.
It's been like a year.
Yeah, I guess it has been, hasn't it? It was last spring break, I think that we recorded.
I think it was. Yes.
Good to be back.
Thank you.
Been a long time coming.
My husband, Matt, joined me 2 weeks ago. Alex, of course, is with us today, and I've even talked my younger son into studying with me, and he's going to be our guest next week to talk about, Alex, wait for it, love does not act unbecomingly fun.
Oh, hey, be sure and tune into that one, fellas. So that's going to be a barn burner.
I love how you just said fellas when most of the listeners are women, but hello, fellas who are listening. Yes, we do not want to leave you out. Oh, well, today, Alex and I are going to talk about how love is not arrogant. And as always, we will be studying using my step-by-step Bible study method. Step-by-step is an inductive Bible study tool that focuses on one word in one verse of scripture to find life application. If you'd like to study along with us today, you will find links to a study sheet and the step-by-step masterclass videos. There are 2 videos. It takes about 20 minutes to watch, and all of that is in today's show notes. Okay, here, my friend, here we go. We are in 1 Corinthians 13:4, and it says in the NASB, love is patient, love is kind, and is not jealous. Love does not brag and is not arrogant. A quick book overview. 1 Corinthians is written by the Apostle Paul. The audience is the Church of Corinth, and the date of the writing is somewhere between AD 53 to 55. Chapter 13, where we are hanging out for this study, has 13 verses. It is a chapter on agape love, and verses 4 to 8 talk about the description of love, things that it is, and things that it is not. And so one more time, love is patient, love is kind, and is not jealous. Love does not brag and is not arrogant. Step 1 in the Bible study method is to choose our word. I already said our word is arrogant, but I'm going to turn it over to Alex to help us go through that step in the Bible study method.
So already, like, doing this, doing my homework, doing these definitions, I'm like, I think I'm in for one today personally, right? Because like I'm already like seeing where this is going.
There's some ouchie already.
Already, we haven't even done nothing yet, But arrogant means an exaggerated sense of one's own importance or abilities. So either your own importance or abilities are kind of exaggerated to yourself, right? So some synonyms. Words like haughty, conceited, egotistic, and some antonyms are, words like humble or modest. So definitely something that I've been accused of being and definitely have been at times. I think a lot of people can say that about themselves, but something that, definitely hit home for me.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your honesty around that. We can all relate to times. I always think that pride is an interesting thing because I used to think because I was insecure, I wasn't proud.
Hmm.
But I have learned the Lord has taught me so much about my insecurity being a different form of pride because pride is really about self focus. And
Hmm.
whether we are, I can't remember the word that you just used, but we're uber proud of our accomplishments. Let's just say it
Hmm.
that way, right? And we need to share that, or we're so insecure, and of course, we're all on some kind of continuum with that, but we're so insecure. But either way, we are focused on ourselves more than others. And in that place of self focus, we can't really serve or be the version of ourselves that God's calling us to be. Right. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah. So that's been important for me to learn as well. One of the antonyms that stood out to me when I was studying was the word simple
Mm.
as an opposite of arrogant. It's almost, and that led me to contentment. I think there's something when we are, it's almost like when we're boasting about our accomplishments or when we're focused on our own self and accomplishments or even traits or gifts or anything like that. There's this lack of contentment, I think, in us, almost like we're searching for more of something. And when we're searching for more of something, so often it doesn't matter how much more we find, we'll never have enough, right?
Yeah. I think along those similar lines, if you know me at all, you know that I work in athletics, that I work for Saluki basketball. And I played basketball in high school. And so in those experiences, like, I think arrogance so much, comes from a place of having to prove something,
Mhm.
kind of along the same lines that you're talking about, but maybe a little different angle where it's like you're talking about with insecurity, right? Like, prove not only to myself, but to everybody around me that, like, I'm good enough.
Mhm.
And in basketball, it's like I'm good enough to play. I'm good enough to get these minutes. I'm good enough to make these plays, and that can be really easily transitioned into other areas of life. So I think kind of a similar avenue, but that when I've seen it and experienced it in myself, that's oftentimes where it's coming from.
Mhm. Because if we're not proving that, then we're showing weakness perhaps,
Right.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's just too dangerous or risky, especially in the kind of arena that you're talking about. Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
never let them see you sweat sort of thing.
Hmm.
Yeah, emotionally especially, for sure, so. Oh, good start. Step 2 is investigate. We divide that up into 4 parts. Part 1 is to compare our word in other translations. I found a ton of stuff, so I'll be interested if you found other things too, but some of the ways other Bible translations wrote the word arrogant are things like in the King James, puffed up, in the Amplified, display itself haughtily, boastful, proud. The easy translation says, it turns it the other way and it says, love means I will not be proud and say that I am great.
Hmm.
And so often we're like, well, I don't say I'm great, but it's this need to communicate our greatness somehow, and get that, like, insert that when we can. The HCSB says conceited. The Phillips said, cherish inflated ideas of its own importance. That's kind of like
That's
cherish.
eloquent.
I know,
Very eloquent.
cherish. It's like my accomplishments are precious to me,
So
right?
precious. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
it's the very core of what I need.
Yeah. The Message said a swelled head. One said inflated, filled with its own importance. I liked that, actually. The language around that, love is not filled with its own importance. And then the WIC, inblown with pride.
Hmm.
It's like this, like imploding or something, like, it's like creating this inblown to me, like creates this chaos or something internally. Like there's a mess in there, right? When the mess is stems from the pride.
Yeah.
Did you find anything else?
No, I think you hit most of the versions that I was just scrolling through looking for something else said puffed up. That seems to
Yeah.
be the general consensus. But no, I
Mm-hmm.
think you hit them all.
Yep. Good. Okay. Well, part 2 is to research the original word, and I will turn that back to you and remind you that you get no extra credit for pronouncing the Greek word right.
So the Greek word is fusiou
Yeah.
or fusio, whichever one. And it just simply means to inflate, to blow up, to swell up, or then more appropriate for the verse, like to make proud.
Hmm.
But it's really at its root of verb, meaning like to blow. So it's an
Mm-hmm.
action, which I thought was interesting in terms of
Yeah.
like your arrogance, your arrogant nature.
Arrogance.
Your arrogance is an action
Mm-hmm.
that you decide to do.
Yeah.
Um, it's not passive,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm. That's interesting that you decided to do. Are you familiar with the bellows, the tool that is a bellows? Is that something that you're familiar with at
I don't
all?
think so.
So a bellows is this like it's like this accordion sort of thing that you push down. Listener, I'm like showing him as we're on the Zoom. You push it down and the air like puffs out and you use it like to like build up a fire or something. Do you know what
Yes,
I'm
I've
talking
seen
about?
those in like old cartoons. I know what
Yes.
you're talking about.
Yes. Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
I
yes.
know I'm saying my age, but also a bellows
I
is
won't say old.
used. I know. I am.
In
I,
cartoons.
I think like in something like medical equipment, maybe for like
Hmm.
a respirator or something, there's this like almost accordion sort of thing that's inside this tube, right? And it keeps
Yeah,
pushing the air.
yeah.
Does that make sense, right? And as you're talking about because the Vine's dictionary, all that to say, the Vine's dictionary, when I was looking up this word, compared it to a bellows, right?
Sure.
And to blow, right? To blow
Hmm.
air. But as you're saying this about an action, it's like we're the ones though that are squeezing that bellows. We're the ones that are turning that on and continuing to puff up or fan the flame of pride, right?
Hmm.
This is how I nurture this in myself, but also this is how I nurture this environment. You were talking about the basketball team and how that we've all been in places where there's like a culture of something
Yeah.
and we all like encourage it in each other,
Hmm.
right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so there's a sense of belonging that comes from actually behavior that's not going to build us or others up. It's actually going to tear us down. But it's so hard. You have to be so brave to step outside that culture and do it a
Yeah.
different way that most of us just
And
don't.
sometimes that doesn't go well. I mean,
Right.
there are
Now
times
you're not welcome here
where you call
anymore.
that out and you may have an issue
Yeah.
with some people on that team, whatever that whatever kind of team that is,
Right.
it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
As you're saying this about like the bellows, I'm thinking back to the end of the Inside Out movie that we went to see where anxiety is taking over the console,
Yes.
um, and it's just swirling, right? And it's a literal anxiety attack, a panic
Yeah.
attack is
Yeah.
what it is. But where it's just like we're just puffing and puffing and puffing and puffing because like I need it, I need it, I need it, I need it. This
Yeah.
is how I prove my worth, as an
Yes.
individual. Uh,
Yes.
and like you're saying, like we don't even know one, oftentimes the effect that it's having on ourselves, but like also the effect that it's having on the people around us that we're in community with the most. And so it can get out of control very quickly,
Yes.
and in a way where it's like now I don't know how to stop because I've kind of almost like dug yourself a hole, right? Like this is just who I am now to these people. Um,
Right.
and so like actually I don't want to be like this anymore, but this is how they know me.
Yes.
And so if I'm getting minutes, so to speak, and
Right. Whatever that is in our life. Uh-huh.
whatever
Yeah.
that looks like, if I'm getting minutes doing this, then I'm going to keep doing this because even though I'm not healthy and I
I
know that,
want the minutes.
I want the minutes. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to keep doing this because this is what's
Yikes.
working.
Mm-hmm. That's so
Um,
good, Alex. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So
Yeah.
whether you know it or not, there's
Yeah.
kind of two different situations there, but I think both are true. And I've seen both.
I want to circle back on two things that you just said. One, you talked about using this behavior to prove our worth, and I think that's such an important thing to remember to allow the Holy Spirit to check our spirit, to give us
Hmm.
a check because anytime we're behaving like this, we're really trying to find our identity in something other than Christ. We're trying to find,
Hmm.
oh, this makes me cry. We're trying to find our worth in something other than Christ. And he wants that to be uncomfortable because he wants to pull us back and remind us that we are our identity is secure in him and in him alone. And I think that's really an important thing to watch for as this behavior creeps in because it does for all of us. But then the other thing that you said about the effect that it has on ourselves and on others, because when we behave this way, it does have an effect on us because like you were saying, it's hard to like get out of it sometimes, or it takes a lot of courage to say, actually, I don't want to behave this way anymore. I don't want to
Hmm.
show up like this. I'm going to change the dance. That's really hard. But one of the things that it does to others is it can make them feel like less. And so we're putting distance between ourselves and other people that we could be in a relationship because we're hurting them because they feel like less because we are trying to feel like more in their presence. If I get bigger, you get smaller, is this,
Hmm.
instead of inviting. But we're also just putting this space between us and other people because we don't allow them to get very close because we just can't be on someone else's level because our goal always is to rise above other people. Am I saying that in a way that it makes sense? And so we're not even inviting people to share space with us.
I think what you're describing is almost any what I've found is almost any negative, almost anything, um, comes back ultimately to fear,
Hmm.
right? And so like I'm afraid that if I drop my arrogance, that I won't be as respected.
Yeah.
I won't be as important. I won't be whatever that situation may bring you. And so, yeah, I'm not going to let that go because I might lose something if I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid of that.
Yeah.
So yeah. So if that means that people don't really want to like mess with me, or people don't really want to be with me, but I get what I want, then
Whatever.
yeah, then whatever,
Hmm. And
Um,
and we believe the lie. We'll get there in a minute, but we believe the lie. We won't get minutes with humility. The humility
right,
doesn't bring the minutes.
right,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Ooh, okay. All right, part 3 is to read some commentary, and I found this in the Enduring Word. It says, "To be puffed up is to be arrogant and self-focused. It speaks of someone who has a big head. Love doesn't get its head swelled. It focuses on the needs of others." I thought that was good. And then also in the Enduring Word, both to parade itself and to be puffed up are simply rooted in pride. Among Christians, the worst pride is spiritual pride. Pride of face is obnoxious. Pride of race is vulgar. But the worst pride is pride of grace. And I had to sit with that for a few minutes because I'm like, what does this author mean by this? And I think what he or she means is it's as if something that's good in us comes from us and not God. Like we're
Hmm.
claiming the authorship of something that actually is just a gift of God's kindness.
Yeah,
Right. Because there's very little that we actually is there anything? I'm pausing because I'm like, what? There's really nothing. There's nothing we can take credit for. I guess
not
I'll
really,
just be like,
no.
wait a second, Ange. There's nothing you can take credit for. I mean, we work hard and we show up and we do our job. And I think we can take pride in the fact that I'm like, for me in the ministry work that I'm doing, I take pride in the fact that God has called me to something and I'm trying to be as obedient as I can be, but I'm not proud of what I'm doing. At least I need not be. When I am, I need to hear that check, right? Because anything
Right.
I'm able to do because of his grace and his willingness to call me into something.
I think it's twofold, right? Like I think the skills that you have, the natural talents or God-given abilities you have, like that to be proud of that is to in a healthy way or in a Christian way is to point back to where the credit's due, right? In terms of your skill. But we also have been given free will, right? And so
Yes.
for you to have made the decision to use this skill in a way that is glorifying the Lord, right? That is absolutely something to be proud of, like on your own personal level, I
Hmm.
think. So,
Hmm.
and maybe somebody would argue with me about that, but
Hmm.
I think I'm right about that.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's
and
definitely something to be content in, to have peace with.
yeah,
Yeah, I think, yes, I think so.
yeah, and that
To be able to say, to have grace with yourself and say, you're doing your very best to live your life the way that you understand God calling you to live it.
and I'm interested in your opinion on this because athletics, outside athletics, whatever. To me, there's always been a very fine line, um, but a sense that there is an element of pride in having confidence. And and confidence is not a bad thing, um, in terms of that. But um, if you're not proud of what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
then it's very hard to be confident in what you're doing,
Mm-hmm. And to do it
um,
well.
and to do it well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to do it in a
Mm-hmm.
way that when it gets hard, that you'll continue it. right?
Mhm.
And so like
Right.
and anything and I've seen is when you step out in faith on something like this ministry in particular, that gets hard really fast because you're doing something that the enemy is
Mhm.
not okay with,
Mhm.
right? And so you'll get for to use normal or Christian language, flaming arrows,
Yeah.
Christianese, if you will, flaming arrows. But life will get hard, or something will come up where it's difficult. And if you're not proud and confident in what you're doing, it makes it a lot easier to quit when
Mhm.
it gets hard,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
that's not what you're wanting
Right.
out of that.
Yeah. I've learned this the last couple of years about confidence because I think I've struggled with that, or to be able to trust my own instincts. Sometimes I've struggled with that, and I think what what I understand God teaching me in this season is that having confidence in something means that you have experience of success. So for instance, you have confidence on as you're doing your job on with the basketball team, but the very first time you went on a road trip with the basketball team, my guess is you lacked confidence. I've never done this before. I don't have any experience of success with that, right? But as you experience success with something, you build confidence and then you say, I know I can do this. The trouble with that in a spiritual sense is God's always calling us to things we've never done before. And so
Right.
we can't wait till we have confidence and experience. We have to have confidence in him. Our experience is in his faithfulness. And so
Mhm.
even though I don't have confidence in this particular
Right.
space, role, relation, whatever, this is new. It's always new. He's always stretching us. But my experience, my confidence comes because I can trust in his faithfulness because he's proven himself faithful. So while you might not have confidence on the first road trip that you know how to tape the lines or do the locker room, the things that you do that I don't even know all the things that you do. While you might not have confidence specifically in that, you can have
Yeah.
confidence. We can have confidence that God is going to show up and help me in this place that he's invited me to serve on this day. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm going
And
to
that,
go ahead and finish this own step by step and speak to the lie, which is that it'll be different this time.
hmm
That's
he
always
won't,
a lie when it
he
comes to
won't
that.
show up this
He
time.
won't show up this time. This
hmm
time's different.
Yeah.
This is too hard. This is too much. You're not
Right.
ready. You can't
hmm
do this.
Yeah.
All of that stuff.
Yeah.
When it's not been true at any other
Right.
junction, right?
Yeah.
And but somehow at least myself, like I
Right.
get convinced like
Yeah.
every time where it's like it's different this time.
Yeah.
It's
Because
just not true.
right. And when we're facing that for this like step by step we're doing, when we're facing that, will we answer that with vulnerability and humility and trust rather than guard up and try to do it with arrogance that we're
Right.
talking about right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So good.
That's step cubed right there.
That's that's like
That's a whole nother
that's a
thing.
step in a step. Yes,
Yeah.
that's so good. That's so good. All right. All right. Well, part 4 is to try to rewrite this verse in our own words. And so again, the whole verse is love is patient, love is kind and is not jealous, love does not brag and is not arrogant. Alex, when I've been rewriting these that are pieces of the verses, I'm just taking the part that we're studying. So how would you write love is not arrogant based on everything we've been talking about here?
So I found a commentary piece and I didn't write down where I found it from, so I apologize. But it just says that love not puffed up causes us to prefer others to ourselves in a
Mhm.
variety of respects. I thought that
Mm.
was really good.
Yeah, that is really
So
good.
I took that and wrote my rewrite as basically love does not compare their abilities or status with others. It does not need to be better than.
Oh, it does not need to be better than. That's good. That's really good.
And
Yep.
yeah, that definitely checked me a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so much stuff in the field that I work with, but I would assume everywhere,
Everywhere. Yeah.
where you just want to be better than the people who do the same things that you do,
Yeah.
right? Because very few people do something that nobody's ever done before.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really a normal life experience. And
Right.
so like whether you're in basketball, whether you're in athletics, whether you're in podcasting,
Yep.
looking at like, how many streams people get every week, right? Like
That's
it,
dangerous
there
water.
are there are numbers everywhere. There are ways we love to
Measurements
measure
of your
things.
worth.
We love to
Yeah.
measure our own worth,
Yeah.
right? And more so, we like to measure our worth against somebody else's,
Yeah.
because we like feeling like we're better than.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so like love does not need to do that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in every sense,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. It can be good and know it's good without
Hmm.
being gooder than you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good. All right. Step 3 in the method is to find the characteristics of God. I pulled out 2 that spoke to me. I put that God is gentle. He is always accepting, yielding, and extending a listening ear and a helping hand. Like he's not, he doesn't need to prove himself while he's always proving himself, I guess,
Right. Hmm.
and I think that's the way to model. Like I'm just present. I'm extending a helping hand. I'm listening. I'm yielding. I'm accepting. Not because I'm weak. I don't need to make myself small. I can take up, I always say, it is absolutely appropriate to take up all of my space, but not appropriate to take up somebody else's.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
I do,
that
I do what I do,
that's right. And I
and
don't
that's,
apologize for it, and I
yeah.
do it well, and I do take pride in it, as you were saying, but I don't need to be in your space. I don't,
Yeah.
because you're taking up your space doesn't make me feel like I have less space, you know?
Right.
And I think that's where comparison sneaks into me. When I see someone else in their space and they're doing a good job, immediately it makes me feel like I am not doing a good job.
Right.
It can. And I need to remember you don't have you're that's not your space. So you don't
Right.
need to do a good job in that space. You just need to stay in your space and
Be
take
great. Be great in your space,
exactly.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And continue to want to get better
Yeah.
compared to yourself from yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't compare it to outside sources, but like you're the most true like competition, and the way to actually improve is to be better than you were the day before, right? And that's
Right.
that's anything.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
So good.
yeah. I had written willing to yield,
hmm
because my immediate like thought was like, okay, I don't need to be better than, so I'm not gonna like actively look for places um to prove that I'm better than somebody. Um, but what I do know is that somebody will inevitably try to prove that they're better than me.
hmm
And that'll be, right in my face.
hmm
Um, and and so like willing to, like you're talking about, like be like, no, I'm good in my space. And you're coming into my space and now I have a problem. But like I don't need I don't need to win this.
Yeah.
I just need you out of my space.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
there's a difference. There's a
Yes.
difference in
Yeah.
in trying to beat somebody
Yeah.
and just being like, no, like I just need you out of my space
Yeah. Yeah.
in that sense, right? So willing to yield when somebody challenges you, right? Like I
Right.
don't I don't actually need this fight. I don't need to prove anything to you,
Yeah. hmm
whatever that is.
hmm
And then the flip side, self-control to not look for those opportunities to do that.
Self-control is one of mine too. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. Well, how about step 4, identifying the lie? What stood out to you as something to just watch for and pay attention when you might be listening to it?
I think like for me, like you have to be the best at everything.
hmm
Like this
That
need
sounds
to,
exhausting.
yeah, this need to be the best at everything. And I know people that like you can see that in them, and I've been in seasons where it's like, you feel like you can't ever defer to anybody else ever for anything.
Well, and I think one of the things then that happens with that sometimes that the enemy even uses more, if you have to be the best at everything, and we can't be. So then the things that we aren't best at, we tend to try to hide, right?
Yeah,
And then
for
we're
sure.
presenting like false things
Mhm.
and we know that there are things that we're hiding or not sharing. And then the enemy loves to work in isolation. So he gets into those parts and wants to grow shame. So then we're not able to actually be who we are created to be because
Right.
I don't want you to see this part or I don't want you to know this or something bad happened, but I can't share it with anyone because I've created this persona that I don't struggle with things like that. Yeah. All right. Let's wrap up. Let's wrap up,
Up.
Alex.
Wrap it up.
Step 5 is so what, where we just take note of a key takeaway. And mine today, I just wrote this. When I'm tempted to consider myself better than someone else, I can perform an act of service for someone else. We didn't really talk about that, but that's one of the things the Lord led me to is the check when I can feel this in myself. The check is to do something for someone. And that can be a word, a deed, a thought, or prayer, but just turn that from a self-focus. And this
Mhm.
is true in my insecurity sometimes too, is when I feel like if I feel tempted to wallow in my insecurity, I can do something for someone else and remember the enormity of grace that's been poured out on me and offer that as an extension of God's love and grace to someone else. It just shifts the focus from
Yeah.
me to someone else. Yeah.
It kind
Do
of
something tangible to shift the focus.
reminds me when you talk about like anxiety is it anxiety and praise cannot
Yes.
be,
Right. Doesn't share
they
space.
don't share space.
Yeah.
So
And
you're either
self-focus and
anxious.
other focus doesn't share space,
It
I would
doesn't
think
share
too, right?
space, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're
Yeah.
self-focused, like, and you do something for somebody, like you can't, that's a focus shift.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do both.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if you can, like you're saying, like kind of talk yourself through, like, no, I'm gonna do something for somebody else right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it'll really help with like combating that, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. How about
Uh,
you? A takeaway?
I loved what you said about the space. Like I love the way you said that. Like fill take up all of your space
Mm-hmm.
and do that well,
Mm-hmm.
to the best of your ability. Keep getting better at that. And as more space may open up, you
Mm-hmm.
know, continue to have confidence in in not your own abilities, in the Lord
Yeah.
to show you how to do that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, and then take all of it up and don't
Yeah.
apologize for that.
Yeah.
Like you've been given space to do good work in.
Yes.
So do it,
Yes.
Um, and don't look at other people's spaces
Right.
because that's theirs.
It's just
It's not,
distracting.
it's not
It's just
yours.
distracting.
And it's
Yeah.
distracting you from your own space.
And it's
And
not as pretty as what it looks like,
no,
right? Like, I mean, like all of our
no.
spaces have their own messes and insecurities and all that
Yeah,
stuff in there. And it's easy to look at someone else and say, oh,
perfect.
if only I had that space, right? One of the things you were talking about, confidence in our own abilities and things, just kind of as we wrap up, this is another lesson the Lord has really taught me because I used to go back and like double and triple check different like works or I would have like written something and taught something and then it would be time to teach it again. And I would be like, do I need to redo it? Was it any good? It was probably terrible at first. And the Lord just like really like, isn't that just gross? I mean, it's just like
It's
so
horrible.
distracting.
Yeah,
It's terrible.
stop that.
But the Lord really kind of got a hold of my heart and just like whispered, trust your work.
Hmm.
Trust your work. And what he really means is trust our work, the work that he and
Right.
I've been doing together. But there was something about that, like he was saying, have confidence that what I revealed to you and what you put together, even if some time had passed, like it hasn't been negated or something like that. Like
Yeah.
trust your work. And so I think there is this, the more that we trust him to guide us in the first place, then the more that we can trust our giftedness, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for doing this with me
Oh, for
today.
sure.
Oh my
For sure.
gosh. It was so fun.
Yeah.
Friend, we would love to hear your takeaway. If you have one, you can email me anytime at steadyonpodcast@gmail.com. If you would like to hold this study in your hand as we travel through the characteristics of love, you can buy the workbook on Amazon. There is a link to do that in the show notes. If you'd like to be a part of a community Bible study, I encourage you to check out Study On University and join us for our current study. There are links and details in the show notes about that as well. If you haven't yet, I'd be so grateful if you would subscribe to the podcast on whatever directory you use to listen. It only takes a second and it guarantees you will receive every episode. And if someone came to mind as you were listening today, I would love it if you would share the episode with them. Inviting them into what we're doing here is another great way to support the show. One more time, thank you for joining me, Alex. I appreciate you so much.
Thanks, Mom.
And thank you, friend, for listening. I pray wherever your day takes you, you are walking in the confident knowledge that you are a beloved, cherished child of God. Peace.